force is more advancing into the different regions of Tigray, and now we heard that it is surrounding Mekele, and the assumption by many of the supporters of the Ethiopian government is that Mekele will fall under the Ethiopian National Defense Force, probably before Sunday, before the conclusion of the first round of the talk. So this is what is being observed on the ground.
Tekle, what do you think is happening on the ground? Because the Tigrayan position had been that they were not willing to sit and negotiate with the Addis government unless essential services to the region were restored. Has that happened as far as you know?
Well, no, that hasn't happened. And the reason is because starvation remains an official policy of Ethiopia, and they are not ashamed to state that actually on their local media. They say that starvation remains a policy, and that the way to achieve victory in Tigray is by making the people suffer so that they could submit to the federal order. So Andalam is completely wrong when he said that services has resumed in some parts. Of course, the government has been doing some sort of propaganda to say that in areas that it controlled, it has resumed services, but that simply is a lie. Not only has services been cut off totally from Tigray, the government has also actually banned humanitarian organizations from flying to Tigray to deliver even basic medicine, never mind luxury items like food, and food in Tigray now is a luxury. So nothing has happened in the way of resumption of services. And the reason the Tigrayan government has sent delegates to South Africa is to literally beg the international community to push, to urge the Ethiopian government to relent on its total blockade, so that at the very least food could start to trickle in. But I just want to emphasize that Andalam is completely wrong when he says...
Let's allow Andalam to respond. Andalam, your answer to that.
I think my friend is very much far from the area, and he seems to be more sympathizer of Tplf, and I just want to be to talk about to be as an independent and probably as an Ethiopian, which can feel the suffering of both anyone who's living in Tigray or anywhere else. So, in my opinion, there is no reason why the federal government will not deliver if there is available aid in place. Why they are not delivering it as long as they free those areas and they control those areas.
Okay,
previously, because the area was controlled by Tplf, they may have challenges to deliver those aid. But now, if they control the area and if there is aid available, why do they not deliver?
Okay.
It doesn't make sense, in my opinion.
Tekle, I'll allow you to respond. Before I bring back William into the conversation, Tekle, quickly your response, please.
My mother and my father live in an area supposedly freed by the Ethiopian government, and I haven't been able to speak to them for 2 years. So that just gives you what is happening in Tigray. So what he's saying is complete lie.
Okay. William, I'm going to bring you back into the conversation to help us expand this and try to understand how the warring parties in Ethiopia today can reach a settlement. And as Tekle alluded to there, we're not just talking about the Tplf and the Ethiopian government. There are other actors involved in this conflict. Eritrea, we know, has sent troops in to help fight alongside the Ethiopian government forces. There are, of course, the Oromo liberation forces in the Oromo region as well, which is also putting pressure on the Addis government. Is there a settlement today, William, that can satisfy all the parties involved in this conflict, whether it's the federal government, the Tigray government, Amhara nationalists, Eritrea government?
There's certainly no immediate prospect of a settlement, and indeed, the problem in Ethiopia and with Eritrea is that some of these differences almost seem irreconcilable. But it is absolutely right to highlight the role of Eritrea in the conflict. We also have a situation where elements from Amhara region neighboring Tigray, they forcefully seized Western Tigray and still control it. So that will be another very difficult issue to resolve as Tigray demands its return, including a return of the people. This is a very difficult situation. I think if progress is going to be made, it's going to be incremental. And that is why the mediators will be focusing on first getting at least a cessation of hostilities between the federal and the Tigray governments, and then moving on from there to address the issue of Eritrea.
Right. And do you think, and speaking of Eritrea, William, do you think that the president of Eritrea, Isaias Afwerki, will accept any deal that would see the Tigrayan leadership remain in place?
The understanding, the general understanding of the Eritrean position is that they are involved in this conflict so heavily to see the complete eradication of the Tplf as a political force. And so that is, essentially means removing the leadership and ensuring that they can no longer hold power in Tigray, and that Tigray can no longer be a threat to Eritrea. So really, at the moment, there is no sign that Eritrean leadership is interested in a negotiated settlement. They are pursuing a military solution.
And quickly, the relationship between Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki has been a complicated one. Who's leading who there, you think?
I think that is an important question. Undoubtedly, they have a common purpose, a common enemy in the TPLF. Also, at times, there has been signs of strain in the relationship. It is assumed that President Isaias was not happy with Prime Minister Abiy's efforts to start a peace process and strike a ceasefire. There is also the potential for rivalry in terms of regional leadership in the years ahead. So whilst they have been allied during this war, there certainly is some tension developing between Asmara and Addis Ababa and their leaders.
All right, Anduale Miradis, let me come back to you now. What do you see today as the biggest challenge to these peace talks? Can Abiy Ahmed and the TPLF leadership be brought back together, in your opinion?
I think it only depends on the intent of their meeting, because are they forced to sit for this meeting, both sides, I mean the Ethiopian government and the TPLF? Are they forced by a third party to sit for this peace talk, or are they forced to resolve the suffering of their people? That's the major question that they should answer. If they think that they are forced, like if the Ethiopian government is forced to sit for peace talks while it is advancing to Mekele to capture the capital, then it may not make sense for them to make a deal quickly for the ceasefire. Likewise, if the TPLF thinks that they have come to this table because they are losing cities and towns, then this also does not make a solution for this. We don't get solution from this peace talk at the end of the day. So it all depends on the intent of their motive. That's why they went there. Is it because of the influence of US and the UN, or is it because of the suffering of their people? That's the major question at play, in my opinion.
All right, Tekle, your thoughts. What's the solution, and can Abiy and TPLF reconcile?
Well, there is only one thing that has never been tried fully in terms of solution. Everything has been tried and everything has failed. Appeasement has been tried. Threatening with sanctions without actually sanctioning has been tried. But there's one thing that the international community hasn't tried, and that is to actually sanction Ethiopia, to impose arms embargo, and to sanction Eritrea as well, and to support the Tigray Defense Forces with weapons and other ammunition, so that they could defend Tigray, and indeed Ethiopia, because Ethiopia now is under the throes of Eritrea. So I think the solution to any serious thinker, to any serious observer of Ethiopia and of the war on Tigray has been very, very clear, and that is to support the Tigray Defense Forces. So that is the solution. But in terms of the talks, if you would give me 1 minute, Andalim said that the Ethiopian Defense Forces and the Eritrean, actually it's the Eritrean commanders using Ethiopian troops as cannon fodder. That's what's happening. The idea that they are advancing to Matala is a myth. They have been repulsed even from faraway places, so that's not happening. It was a myth that was used by the Ethiopian regime to galvanize Ethiopians to support it, and also to make the international community believe that military victory was next door, so that they would think it had upper hand in the negotiations. But it's a complete myth, and it's just a lie that people like Andalim are trying to perpetuate.
Okay, let's allow Andualim to respond, and also I'd like to hear your thoughts about what Tekle said about the international community sanctioning the Ethiopian government and sanctioning Eritrea as well. What do you make of that?
I think your guest has some bias about solution. You cannot solve the solution by arming did the US save Ukraine from being attacked by the Russians by supplying weapons? So you are telling the same thing to happen in Tigray region. When you supply arms, that means you are allowing more suffering because you are